So we talked about location. Location is basically the height. We're not going to change that with this. I don't recommend anybody trying to put a hive up 30 feet in the air. The comb is different. It's more natural, more organic in a natural hive. The cavity is different. The cavity, we got to talk about not just the volume of space that the bees occupy, but the volume of space that they don't occupy. Also, what is in there as far as the cavity, how much the junk that's in there, the entrance. Where's the entrance? I don't think I mentioned the entrance on many of those things. The entrance is almost always 2/3 up the comb. It is never on the bottom, never. Also, the entrance is a distance from the hive, where in our langstroth hives, we've got the entrance on the bottom and the comb's right there, the bottom of the comb. And you'll never, ever find it that way I shouldn't say never, ever, but because I'll go out and I'll say, oh man, there it is. But I haven't seen it where the entrance is on the bottom of the hive. It's always up, halfway up, 2/3 of the way up where the comb is built. And it's a distance they've got to walk a distance through a propolis-laced tunnel in order to get there. HVAC. I didn't know how else to write that. Ventilation in the hive. A lot of things are talked about ventilation in the hive. Like we said, we got to clean out all those dead bees on the bottom board so the air can get up in, so the bees can get out. We've got to have a top entrance so the air can flow. They can get out the top if the bottom is blocked. Well, they don't have that. They've got one entrance typically. Sometimes there's a couple of them. But there's the top of a natural cavity is always closed in. There's no space. And I'm sure the bees choose that for a reason. I believe everything they do for a reason. The biome, the area they live in. It's a little bit different. Like I said, it's got all the old stuff in there. It's got all the junk in the bottom, dead bodies, stuff that's cleaned out. They've had life cycles of the hive where things have broken down and put in that deepness of dirt and things and rotting things in the bottom where all kinds of critters can live. I don't keep bees. We keep an environment, keep a microbiome of things. We've got forests, we've got tundras, we've got deserts, and we've got beehives. And it's just an incredible area they develop in there. So let's go to looking at this thing here. Pull it a little bit. So what I've got here, this is a deep box sitting on top of a deep box, and I'll lift this up because, well, let's see if I can do this. There we go. It's a little better. Deep box on top of a deep box. Now we mentioned how you can't see my head. There we go. Deep box on top of a deep box. I build all my own covers. All my covers I build with 3/4 inches of plywood, an inch, sometimes 2 inches of styrofoam. This has got an inch of styrofoam in it. And then Luan. So this is an insulated top cover. It's very heavy. There's no reason to weight it down. Then under that, I have my inner cover. Now I have the inner cover here because what it does is it creates an airspace. These inner covers specifically do not have an upper entrance. This is a solid inner cover, and there's no reason to have an upper entrance on this what I've done to these hives. And then I've got more insulation. We talked about the tree where you've got that infinite R value of tree and the big mass that's on top. They need a lot of insulation on top. And I wouldn't say just in the winter, all year long. So more insulation. Inner cover. What do we use for an inner cover? I forget what this is called. Who remembers what this is called? It's that bubble insulation, silver bubble wrap stuff you get at the store.
It's Reflectex.
There it is, Reflectex. And it comes perfectly. You go buy a roll, it's exactly the right width to fit on the top of a 10-frame hive. It's amazing. Like they did it on purpose. Essentially, this is an 8-frame hive. This is an 8-frame hive because these two outer frames are not used by the bees. So inside we've got comb and whatnot. Move that over. And let me show you this first. This is the entrance right here. This entrance, it's sloped downward. There's a hole that I've got drilled in the side of this box. I believe this is an 1.5 or 2-inch hole that's drilled in the side of the box. And you can see that there's a channel the bees can walk up through. And what they're going to do in this, and the best thing to use here would probably be rough sawn wood, so they've got lots of stuff to stick propolis to. So that's just a little box right there. Pretty simple. And there's the entrance. And I've got that kind of slope downward so anything can drip out. It will drip out this way. And then that thing was sloped down, so if it drips out this way, if water gets in here for some reason, it can come out easy enough. But that's not the only way to get water out. We'll see in a second. And what I've got here on my outside frames, I've got one over here, and I've got one over here. And what this is a regular frame with 1/2-inch hardware cloth on it. And when it's in the hive, that hardware cloth is pressed up against this hole. You can't see it in the screen, but that hardware cloth is pressed up against this hole. So when the bees come in this hole, they've got to walk through the hardware cloth. That keeps anything out, like if mice or something come up in here, whatnot. So the reason this is like this is another place for critters to live. And I like to fill it up with stuff like this here. This is a piece of bark. This is wood chips. This is different things that I find laying around. Just do a nice fill here, you know, nice and tight over here, nice and tight over here, and a little bit loose in the middle here. That way the bees can go through the hardware cloth, make their way through this frame, and then enter the hive. This gives them a chance, all kinds of stuff to propolize, They've got to walk through this tunnel that's propolized, and they go through there, and all this area here gives little things a place to live. Things that live in a colony of bees, that microbiome, where all the essential other organisms can live, which are required inside of a hive in order to have that complete environment. That's pretty good. So we're going to go to the next layer here. This is a simple slatted bottom rack. It basically prevents the bees from building on the bottom of that comb or on the bottom of those frames. Because the last thing we want is a lot of those other pictures I showed you where there's a full box of wild comb attached to the bottom of the box. You're not moving a single frame onto there to inspect. With a slatted bottom rack like this, they're not going to build comb attached to the bottom of this. You don't have to worry about that. And talking about comb, this is actually a plastic foundation in this. They don't like that. Use starter strips. Put a starter strip in there, get them oriented properly. Didn't stay on. That way, the bees will build the comb in the frame so we can still do our inspections and do what we're supposed to do. This box, empty. That's that empty space that they need to have. That they need a bigger volume of air within a hive than they do. In a natural hive, they need a bigger volume of air. And then below that, you can see this is another slatted rack. The rest of this, one of the neighbors was tearing down a deck. I stopped at their place. I said, "Hey, can I have a couple pieces of lumber?" They've got old deck boards, which a lot of them are still good. Some of them are rotted out. You can pick through and find what you need. And that's what I did. So this is deck boards. I cut them into 1-inch strips. And I made a really heavy-duty slatted bottom rack. These are 3/8-inch space, so the bees can travel up and down. And a regular commercially made slatted bottom board, the spaces are much wider. I'm going to say that's about 3/4 of an inch wide. A lot of things can get through that. In this, not so much. So what's going to happen is, the bees can come down here, and they're going to go into the hive stand. And you can see in the back there are 4x4s. This is a really heavy unit. Something else about natural hives is the vibration. You take a standard langstroth hive, it's flimsy, it's light, without the honey and bees in it. It's very light and flimsy, and it takes on a lot of vibration. You bump into it, the thing moves. In a natural hive, you can kick a tree, bees won't even know you're there. Maybe they will, but they won't be really bothered by it. Let's see if I can pick this thing up for you. So this is 4x4s in the corner, and that's what the slatted bottom rack sets on. And then this is just standard deck boards on the outside. And then on the bottom, I've got 1/2-inch hardware cloth. And this sits right on the ground. Now, the reason I put the hardware cloth on there is to prevent something from digging under and climbing up inside, making a home in the bottom of this. So that's heavy. This is heavy. And that gives a killer base for a hive of any kind, really. So the ground is below there. You can put some bark, you can put some sticks, you can put some mold leaves in there. Whatever is on the ground around where you're putting your hive, put it inside this box, 4, 5, 6 inches, maybe more. It'll settle, it'll rot, it'll break down. Put your empty box on. Put your slatted bottom rack on. So again, now the bees can go through there. They can check out inside here. You can put some stuff in there too, some sticks and whatnot. I've heard it called an eco floor. I think it was an eco floor. So you put stuff in there. That way, whatever falls off will just land in the bottom and create that mass of material in the bottom that is naturally found in a hive. And then this box goes on. And this is our colony. This is where the colony lives. This is we hear a lot about overwintering in a single deep now. Single deep is popular now, and this is why. Bees like a small area. They do well in a small area. this is the single deep that they do well in. They don't even bother going down here because this is enough. But they've got this for good air circulation. It'll open, like again, it's open right up to the ground. Therefore, they've got all this column of air underneath that can circulate and do what they need to do. In the winter, they've got a lot of carbon dioxide in the hive, and that can circulate down through this. Carbon dioxide is heavy, so it kind of drops down, and the fresh air can circulate up naturally. And then we've got our entrance here, and again, the bees got to go through here to the framed. With the bark and wood chips and the leaves and whatever else you can stuff in there, and they'll find their way in and out of there, and they'll clean it out, chew it out. They'll make the entrance just how they want it, and it'll be great for them. Now we can take this. We can take our standard super and throw our super right on top. This would be great in a good flow. So let the bees do their thing, let them fill this up. The flow is gone. Mid-July hits or whenever it's happening. And then I let them do then I take it off. Leave the bees in here. Insulation. The inner cover, again, this is just to create an airspace, an air pocket that holds temperature, helps regulate the keeps more into the insulation value. And then this was supposed to be stuck to the side, but but it's not staying there. So one last thing, and then we'll go to questions and discussion and whatever else. Orientation. The combs in this hive go front to back. Put a compass on the top of this hive. Orient it with the needle, north to south. This here, if this is north to south, you want the entrance south. So you can put the entrance over here if you have to, or this way, depending on which side you got it on or whatever. That way the bees have a chance to go in there. They'll build the comb straight. They know they'll like it better. And they do amazingly well in something like that. So that's turn the brightness down on this light. There we go. So if there's any questions or you want to talk about anything or you got other ideas you mention, looks like we got a couple things in the chat here. Let's see what we got. Speak up if you want to say anything. See, there's a question here. Should I replace old comb I used last year in my swarm traps? No, the older the comb, the better in the swarm traps.
It's been in the freezer all year.
That's all right. I guess all the other comb and things that are out in the wild are in the freezer too if they don't have bees in it keeping it warm, right?
Yeah.
Would you be able to have two deeps on this, or do you recommend always just one deep brood box? It is recommended to have just one deep brood box. They've got enough space in there. The natural size of a cavity is about that. Again, there's been a lot of studies on wild hives that show that a single brood box is good. That's becoming more well known and a popular concept to overwinter in a single deep. So they do well in that. Ontario, you up there with Ian, the Canadian beekeeper. Watch his YouTubes. He does single deeps. And he's up there in the cold.
He also brings his indoor.
Let's see, with 8 frames, the space is reduced. The space for the queen to lay is reduced. Are you seeing increased swarming in smaller colonies in general? I like to keep smaller colonies, and I do. I see there would be more swarming because of the smaller size. So I do a lot more splitting. I'll pull frames out, and if I find a good couple of hives that have a lot of brood in it, I'll take a couple frames of brood, a couple frames of honey, and make a split. Sometimes it takes three hives to make one split, depending on the time of year and how they're doing. But I'll keep them small and keep them that way. They seem to be able to work a smaller cavity and protect themselves better and keep themselves more healthy in a smaller box. Why don't the bees use the outside 2 frames? Because I stuff them full of bark. I stuff them full of bark, all this old stuff here. Break stuff like this down and fill those outside frames up because I got hardware cloth. It's like a clamshell, a hardware cloth clamshell, and I stuff it full of this stuff. And the bees will crawl through that and propolize it. There's been suggestions in previous couple of years where you go inside and you rough up the inside of your box. You take a angle grinder or a coarse sandpaper and just rough everything up so they got a place to propolize. But if you've got a frame like that in there, stuff full of that, there's going to be a much more surface area for the bees to work and play with and do what they want with to propolize, and they're going to have to walk through that. Having a side entrance like that halfway up the hive, halfway up the colony, halfway up the comb, they're forced to walk through all that garbage that is in that clamshell of a frame. So yeah, they're not going to build comb in that. They're just going to propolize all this junk in there, and you can fill it up and put whatever you want. Screen bottom boards. Well, that's kind of what this is a screen bottom board. It's open to the ground. The difference between a screen bottom board, what is typically used, most hives are set on a pallet or on a couple of 4x4 beams. So that screen bottom board isn't open to the ground. It is open to the whole environment. And we don't want it open to the whole environment. We want it open to the ground. So that if you keep a screen bottom board on year round, screen open all year round, you want a column that is airtight all the way to the dirt. That way it gives that volume of air, that mass of air without a breeze, without a wind chill running through that hive.
Okay, I wasn't sure on that. I've just seen some other videos where people talk about them and keep them open, but they didn't go into detail whether their hives are sitting on the ground, if they're up in the air with open bottoms. And mine are up in the air with open bottoms, and I keep mine closed because I thought that I'm not going to leave that wide open where the bees can get the breeze right up through the hive all winter long.
Right, like that open air hive I showed you on the eave of the house. I don't think that one's going to survive because of the wind chill. Man, it was cold here a couple days ago. I think it went down into negative zeros someplace. That's just the wind chill and being up high like that. The wind is exponential. The higher you go, the colder it gets. So I don't think they're going to survive like that, even on the ground. If they've got wind chill that goes through, they can get them. That's something I am very conscious about. Is when I open tops in the winters. I don't like to. I might select one or two hives just because I'm curious. I want to see what's going on in the hives. So I'll select one or two that I can go out and check out over winter. But all the other ones I don't touch because they put a propolis seal in there to prevent wind and airflow. They close things up. A lot of the times, if there is an upper entrance, they close that upper entrance to prevent airflow. So if I go out and crack a propolis seal, well, I've just introduced airflow into that hive, and they're going to have to work harder to keep it warm. They're going to have to work harder. Therefore, they're going to eat more honey because they're, burning more energy.
I kind of always wonder, especially when I'm on Facebook, you'll hear people talking about keeping it open all year long. My biggest question there is where are those people? Are they in Georgia or are they in Canada?
That's a great question. That's something all beginner beekeepers need to know. If you're taking advice, you listening to beekeepers that are doing it and being successful, make sure they're in the same climate, same growing zone as you are keeping your own bees. That's really important because there are different things that work in different areas. 2 weeks from now, we have a guest speaker coming on that's from Hawaii. And I don't think anybody is going to keep bees the same style as Hawaii as they do in New York. It's just not it, but it'll be fun.
Honey production, 12 months of the year. We don't have that here.
See, this hive seems to. Another question. This type of hive seems to. It keeps moving on me. This type of hive is intended for hobbyist backyard beekeeping rather than commercial. Is that correct? Yeah, I'd say so. I don't see why. I mean, commercial guys could do this too. They could if they bolt together a bottom thing. If they're moving hives, migratory, they can bolt all this together on the bottom. It's essentially an extra 2 deeps and it's empty, so it could be moved easily. It just takes more volume. I don't treat either. I don't use chemicals to treat for mites. This works great. Smaller hives work better for treatment free than larger hives do. If a commercial guy was doing this, they could keep all this like this. Add a bunch of supers, and really work them hard, and then they're going to reduce the energy they have for handling their own environment. So they're going to have to be treated. I don't see why they couldn't do it. I think the entrance is excellent, and could be easily incorporated into a commercial operation, even if you don't have that extra space on the bottom.
I want to see how I can incorporate that type of entrance into my lawn.
Dr. Seeley's Audacious Hive. You know what? I don't know what that is. I'm going to have to write that down and look it up. Let's see. Did I read all the questions on here? Open. Where do you get pseudoscorpions? They just show up. I see them all. Like I have a wood stove here, and every now and then I see them on the logs that I bring in the house, along with all the stink bugs that show up. They're hiding in the bark.
My wife would kill me.
I got my 2-year-old trained. He comes in, he says, "Oh," the girls say, "Oh, there's a stink bug, get it away." And my 2-year-old comes up and scoops it up and carries it outside. He's a good kid. That's the difference between boys and girls for sure. It happens. Let's see. If late winter feeding is necessary, how would you address that with your hive configuration? Let's see, as I mentioned earlier about just putting the super on during the early flow. After July, leave the bees on their own. They should be able to top that hive off with honey the way they want it. Typically, I stop touching my hives early October, late September, some of them. That way, the weather is still nice and warm. They can do what they need to do in the hive, and they can set it up for winter. It's more important to have the bees full of food and have enough to survive over winter than it is to open it up in winter to give them extra. So on a management level, we should be allowing our bees to store enough and cap it before cold weather hits. And if they don't have enough honey when the deep super is full, then they're spending too much energy keeping warm. They're just messing up. They don't have a tight cluster. So, well, I guess those bees are going to go, and survival of the fittest. I guess that's a Tom Seeley thing, is Darwinian beekeeping. That's a lot. It's a lot of what I do. Survival of the fittest. I tell my kids that's how it's going to happen too, but I let them get away with a lot of stuff. My winter survival rate. Well, it used to be pretty bad. It's getting better. A lot of people who treat and do all this stuff, all the scientific things, feeding and whatnot, can get about a 90%, 99% even good survival rate. With this, I don't get so good. I get a lot of genetics from cutouts. Some bees are great, some are not. It's a very dynamic setup. So there's bees that can survive and there's bees that not. It used to be I could lose 60 to 70% when I had fewer hives. If when I had below 20, I could lose all of them. Now I'm up to about maybe 70% survival. And most of the ones that don't make it are because they're cutouts or swarms that have come in late and haven't had time to set up shop. If I had to treat them, what are my mite levels looking like? I don't treat. So even if they're high, I don't treat. I'll check every now and then just to see what's going on. And that's another thing. But it's always good to know what the mite levels are. I check more in my better hives because I'm looking for, because I graft queens in the spring, graft queens in early summer. And so I want hives that have low mite counts naturally, bees that can fend off the mites. So I do check, and sometimes I've got hives that are, be 10 mites for every 300. Some are, 1 or 2 or 0. I find it to be a pretty good system to keep small colonies. Do I put my cutouts in the same yard as my good hives? There's a stink. I got distracted. There's a stink bug crawling up over there. Probably came in on that bark I brought in. So my distraction there. That happens. You put cutouts in the same yard as your good hives. Sometimes. Usually I've got a separate yard that they go to. If for some reason I'm running late or it's getting towards nighttime or something, I'll just drop it off in my backyard and go. I don't worry about it too much. Looking because the cutouts, I do a very thorough inspection. I look at every piece of comb. I look at nearly every single bee, and I know what I'm bringing. So if it's something that shouldn't be near my yard, I don't let it be. See, David wrote, house your bees in small hives. Consider using just one deep hive body for a brood nest and one medium depth super over a queen excluder for honey.
That's a
You won't
copy
harvest.
from Tom Seeley's audacious. One of his,
Okay.
number 3 of his 10 bullets for keeping bees.
All right. So from Tom Seeley, he wrote this. House your bees in small hives. Considering using just one deep hive body for a brood nest and one medium depth super over a queen excluder for honey. You won't harvest as much honey, but you will likely have reduced disease and pest problems, particularly varroa. And yes, your colonies will swarm, but swarming is natural, and research shows that it promotes colony health by helping keep varroa mite populations at safe levels. See Loftus et al. 2015. There you go. From a person who researches this stuff, probably more than I do, or at least more years than I have. I don't use queen excluders though. The only time I use queen excluders is when I'm grafting queens and I need the protection. Last thing I want is rogue queens coming into my cell builders and cell finishers and destroying everything, all the work I've done. I'm gonna check over here, see if there's any questions over here on this part. Well, there's a bunch of viewers over there on the Facebook stream, but it doesn't look like either. If they haven't asked questions, they haven't shown up.
How often do you lose part of your hives to swarming then with your setup, or do you not see that based off your staying on top of them?
There is a running joke about people wanting to put swarm traps near my house. So what's that tell you?
Yeah, that's my joke.
Yeah, I lose a bunch to swarms. It happens. Last year, I had 6 swarms just in my driveway. I saw that one little part of the video clip where I was chainsawing that tree open, and in the background was a bunch of supers. Well, apparently bees like to come in. My bees swarm into my garage because, hey, this is where all the empty supers are. This is a great spot to set up. So it happens. But I do try to continuously split all summer long until I feel like it's late enough where I shouldn't split anymore.
So based on your natural beekeeping with not treating, is that kind of in a way, essentially your way of kind of treating them indirectly by letting them swarm if you don't? And that way it's taking the mites with them?
Yeah, it's part of the system. I mean, I don't want them to swarm. I want to keep the bees. So it's not something over here where Tom Seeley writes, where to go? Yes, your colonies will swarm, but swarming is a natural, and research shows that it promotes colony health by helping keep varroa mite population at safe levels. Well, isn't that the same as splitting? There's another part there. He also writes, Tom Seeley writes that quarter mile between colonies. Do I do anything regarding density? Sometimes, but I have such a influx of colonies from doing cutouts and different things and doing splits that it doesn't always happen. Every year I add a new spot, so I don't keep one colony in one spot. I keep several colonies, maybe a half a dozen or a dozen, and then just move them around. Swarming or splitting breaks the brood cycle, breaking mite reproductive cycle. Yep, we talked about that, I think, last time. Is to break the brood cycle. Although mites can live about 180 days, same as bees, without in the phoretic state, usually in the winter, if they really need to. Typically, they're on a bee for 5 days and want to jump right back in and continue the reproductive cycle. But they can live a lot longer. Some of them, basically with a brood break, what happens is there ends up with more mites, founder's mites, inside of a cell. And the bees recognize that more, even the ones that aren't as hygienic as others. They'll jump in there and recognize that and clean them out. So that's part of the brood cycle. There's a lot of different things that happen in a brood break.
How do we breed mite bite? Ankle bite.
I didn't hear you. Can you say that again?
How do you breed for bees to be mite biters?
Mite biters.
It seems to me if the bees would bite the mites on the other bees, then kind of use mite bite.
Yeah, breeding is a whole other thing. Breeding would probably be instrumental insemination, whereas basically what you got to do is you got to look at your genetics. You say this hive is doing great. This queen's daughters are doing a great job. Let's breed from this queen. And this hive over here is doing a great job too. So let's take these drones and put this queen and these drones together and see if we can catch both of those good traits in the next generation of bees. I like to give queens away to the people around me. Somebody comes over and says, "Yeah, I got bees near you." I say, "Oh, great! Here, take some of my queens. These are really good, and let's keep them up. That way, the whole area, the way when the queen flies away to get mated, chances are she's going to mate with a good drone." I think I'm in a pretty good area where there are fewer beekeepers in the general mating area. So when I do select, it works out fairly well.
Got Abe Yoder all around me.
How do I attach the doorway to the hallway or the hive or whatever? Hallway. That's a great term. Screws. I got a couple screws in there. I didn't put them all the way in because I wanted to be able to take it off.
Must be some time for some Craig screw. Pocket screw.
Yeah, pocket screws.
I had a question about that. Have you seen those small hive beetle deterrents that are like tubes with a downward facing entrance where bees can cover and get up into the entrance? Beetles can't.
There was a lot of research on like PVC pipes, different things that come out the front. Turning it, the idea is beetles want to fly straight in. They don't want to go up and around and things like that. The idea was given up on because the people who have tested it didn't find a difference. There's somebody that makes bottom boards, apparently, that the bees have to fly up, like inside, underneath the bottom boards, rather than having an entrance on the front. I think that might have a better effect. Now, if it's really working or not, I don't know. I haven't read any or seen anything about it, but it seems to be a popular thing where everybody wants to try something new. And that's something else where in my area, we don't have a huge problem with hive beetles. But if you go south where it's warmer a longer period of the year, hive beetles are more prevalent and more of a problem. So people are trying to work more with them, where because it doesn't affect me, I haven't had reason to test things out.
So I see there's some videos out there where people are making them out of empty CD cases. They just say that the bees like to close the entrance off with propolis. So you got to kind of keep an eye on them and keep them open, but they seem to catch the beetles pretty well.
Oh yeah, that'd be a hive beetle trap.
Yeah,
kind of like the oil traps too. The same deal. Hopefully, the
I
bees
have
will frail and fall in there.
I have the oil traps, and I don't really care for them that much. And I've heard, what do they call them? Beetle blasters. I'm not sure how they work. I've heard of those, but I don't. Maybe I might try a couple of those. I'm not sure.
Cut Swiffer pads in half and put them in the top of on the top bars of your hive. That works great.
Now, does it kill them or does it just catch them?
It catches them and it kills them, but make sure you get the unscented ones.
Okay, yeah, I've heard about that too, and it's something I'll try.
They will propolis it to the top of your bars, so periodically you will have to open it up. They will live underneath it, so periodically you do have to pop them off and kill the beetles that live underneath it, but they will get stuck in the Swiffers.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I think the beetles actually put out a call, kind of like brood, that the bees will feed the beetles. They'll trap them, they'll corral them in, and they'll propolis them into a corner, and then they'll feed them and keep them alive like little prisoners. So if they're stuck in the Swiffer pad, they're probably going to be alive as long as they're there, unless the bees can't get up around into where they're at.
I had a nuke I bought last year, and it had some black plastic foundation in it, and it was ancient, what he gave me. And there was a damaged section in the center of one of the frames, and I don't know if maybe there was an old queen cell in there or whatever too, but hive beetles decided to make a home there. And in about a 2 or 3 inch section, I pulled out a frame one day to examine it, and I saw those maggots squirming all over the place. I'm like, oh no, what the hell is this? And I took my hive tool and I scraped it all out, and I ended up putting it back in there, and the bees cleaned it up. And the next time I checked it, it was like they were never there, but they made up home there and must have did well in that little section for a short period of time, because it was just a nasty maggot mess in there.
Yeah, That is, I remember, like I said, I remember the first time, and really every time I see it, it's I'm grossed out by it, and it's like, oh no, it's not what I want to see in my hives. I'm sure the bees don't care for it either, but if they're there, just the bees aren't. It's probably the cavity's too large, and they can't cover and patrol the whole thing to take care of that mess. That's why a smaller hive works better, is because they can patrol the whole thing. There's redundancy in the bees walking around and taking care of things.
Yeah, you could tell. I mean, I watched the bees, and they were trying to keep them in check and keep them in that section, or whatever. And but I'm sure if I didn't scrape them all out of there, they might have got out of hand, because it was a like I say, a 2 or 3 inch diameter circle of them, quite a few of them.
So usually I sit here until about 9 o'clock. Everybody's being quiet though. You got about another 15 minutes to hash anything out you want to talk about. Doesn't have to be about this. If you got other questions or anything, or you want to talk about something else, what's going on with the bees, or things you want to take care of, or get some advice on. Still got a pretty good group here. Anybody can talk and answer. And
I got a question. I don't know if anybody can give me answers, because I have 5 hives, and they're set up in different manners. I got one hive that I just tipped even farther than I had it tipped already. The entrance tipped, downward, so if there was any moisture inside it would drain off. But I've got 2 deeps, brood chambers, and then in the left medium full of honey on top of all 5 hives. I drilled 3/4 inch holes in the handles of the top medium supers, the honey supers. I ended up taping those over with duct tape for the winter, but I had notched out inner covers on my tops. I think I'm having some condensation trouble, because I go out there every so often and scoop my bees out, pull my entrance reducer out and scoop the bees out of the bottom, and I'm getting piles of real wet bees out of a couple of the hives, and even running into the little hook that I made, I'm running into ice inside there and pulling ice out and everything. And it's kind of scaring me a little bit. So today, as a matter of fact, I cracked open the tape on all the upper holes of the supers to maybe give them a little more air circulation. I've got 3 hives with ventilated bottom boards, which I do have closed, but they seem to be okay. It's one of the ones with my solid bottom boards that seems to be getting a lot of wetness in the bottom of that bottom board and ice buildup on it. So that one's kind of scaring me a little bit. I don't know if anybody's got any suggestions, or should I is it a good idea that I pulled the duct tape open on those 3/4 inch holes on those upper medium supers to get some more airflow through there, or what should I do? I've also got candy boards on top, for with dry loose sugar on top, so that, I heard, to watch videos on how to make them, put them in so that they would pick up moisture and everything. So I'm not sure what to do in that situation, because it just seemed like the bees are just soaking wet, and I'm getting ice buildup inside the bottom of that hive and on the bottom board.
It sounds like all your moisture is on the bottom. You haven't opened the top up to look to see if there's ice on top. The bees, they continue to live in there and respirate and sweat, and there's a lot of moisture that is generated. Sweat, I shouldn't say sweat. Bees don't sweat, but the colony generates moisture through respiration, through eating the honey and everything they do. A lot of moisture is developed in a hive, and it has to go someplace. And a lot of the times we put insulation on the top, so when the outside of the hive is cold, that moisture is going to condensate. It's going to come out of the air and form droplets. And what we wanted to do is go to the cold spot, which is the sides, and run down the sides. And hopefully that's what's happening, that the water is condensating on the sides of the hive, running down and just ending up on the bottom board. And it's being absorbed by the dead bees that are on the bottom, which is normal. A lot of bees die over winter. It happens all the time. What we don't want is that water to condensate on the top of the hive and then rain down on the bees, because wet bees do not do well in the cold. I mean, you jump out of the shower and run out in the snow. It's not fun. But if you're dry and you run outside, you don't feel the cold as much. So we don't want bees to be rained on. So we put insulation at least on the top of the hive. That way the top stays warmer than the sides, and then the water will condensate there first and just run down the sides. I would keep those holes closed up so we don't get a cross breeze going in through those holes and chill the cluster.
Okay.
This is my second winter, and you can see behind me my apiary. Last year I had one of those bee cozies around a stack hive and just the yellow long hive. This year I'm trying what sounds very similar to what Dr. Seeley does. He recommends, like 2 inches of foam insulation on the top and 1.5 inches all the way around the box. I have 1 inch of foam insulation on my boxes on all 4 sides. Then I have one of the things Dr. Seeley doesn't believe in is, he doesn't believe in it. He doesn't use his upper entrance. So it's like a cup upside down. That heat just stays in there. And hopefully, like in my case, I hope I have just enough tilt in my boxes that if there is any condensation on top, it'll run to the back. Run down the front wall. But they do. He did say something about that condensation is actually provides water for the bees during the winter.
That's true, especially if they've got dry or crystallized honey in there. They have to have water to melt the honey in order to ingest it. They can't chew crystals. It's got to be liquid, so they add water to any liquid crystallized honey or sugar in order to drink it up. But yeah, the upper entrances. I have heard that through Dr. Seeley's talks, and that's the same thing I see in all the bees I take out of trees and whatnot, and houses and cutouts and everything else. Same deal. The entrance is about 1/3 to 2/3 up the side of the cavity they've built in, and there's nothing on top. It's just solid. It's a solid top. So if there is heat that rises up, it stays there. That's a great point.
I was very thankful today. One of my vertical hives, last month I went in there with an inspection camera and didn't see any bees hanging off the bottom of the frame. I figured, well, that was a dead hive. I went out there today and found carcasses, on the bottom board, landing board, and around the snow in front of the hive. So I was kind of happy about that.
Sounds strange. I'm happy to see dead bees, but you know what? If they're moving dead bees, that means they're alive and they're doing their job.
Yeah.
I have one hive that every time I check it, the bees are still all the way down on the bottom brood box. You can see them right through the entrance slot when you take the entrance reducer out. And then the rest of them, have all moved up. I'm not sure what position in the hives they are, but it's funny that this one particular hive, and it is my strongest hive. Maybe there's just a lot of bees in there. They're still very low in the hives, where the other 4 are up higher up into the hives. I noticed I've seen people make I've post things where a lot of their bees are right now are all the way up in the top supers too, and it kind of worries them that the bees are that high up already.
Yeah, well, this would be a great hive if you were going to split in the spring or try to aim I always say genetics, but it's really the behavior of the bees and the behavior of not moving up, of actually staying lower in the hive means they're not eating a lot of honey, that they're clustering well, they're overwintering better, or they're overwintering in a tighter cluster where they require less energy. So if you split in the spring, use that hive and let the others just be production hives, and always use that one. If you get queen cells or whatever in that one, use those queen cells to do splits from the other hives.
Do you think they're
it's a great
do you
trait
think
to look
being
for?
do you think being into February now that they're starting to lay yet?
Probably. I don't think the queen ever really stops laying. They might though. Depend. I don't know. I don't open the hives in the winter, so the only
Right.
thing I can go based off is what other people say. You know.
Yep. I don't open them either.
Somebody asked if I could run through this stack again. Let's see another question. Do you have one of your frames with a hardware cloth on the side away from the entrance? Yes. If there was condensation there, I wouldn't worry about it. Right. I've got one of those frames on either side. Let's see if I can pull this back. So again, this is stuck to the side. Almost sticks in there. Let me lower this down. So we've got the top cover. Again, this is an insulated top cover, so it's very heavy. This is an inner cover. This is a standard inner cover with the hole in the center. But there's no entrance on it at all. So it fits tight here, fits tight to the top cover, so it's just a pocket of air here. And underneath that, piece of hard foam board insulation. And then this would be the actual inner cover, and it's the Reflectex. And this is great. They don't chew this stuff, and it comes up, peels right up easily. It'll all be all propolized down there, and it's easy to come up, and it doesn't disturb the bees too much. Oh, look at that! You can see through it. The magic of the green screen there. And then in here, it's essentially 8 frames of comb. And again, I recommend just starter strips to keep it all natural comb. Now, if you want to do something else in your honey super, because you're going to run it through an extractor, that's a different story. But in the brood nest, definitely all natural comb. I highly recommend that. And then in either side, we just have a clamshell type frame that's has hardware cloth. This is 1/2-inch hardware cloth, so the bees can walk through it easily, and that gets filled up with pieces of bark. You put that in there, shove bark in there or whatever else. Now you don't want to block off. If it's on the side of the entrance, you got to be careful. You don't want to put a solid block where the entrance is. It's got to be loose so the bees can move it out of the way. And this is some of the stuff that I put in there. It's just wood chips. It's dried leaves. And this is some moss and some just random stuff that you find in the forest floor.
That's your year round or just your wintering setup?
Oh, this stays. This is year round. This goes in there. The bees have to travel through this, and this gets a lot of propolisation, and the bees are always walking across this. The bees are always walking across through the hallway. That's a great way to put it. This bee hallway, the foyer, and they can go through here and propolize in here and do their thing. They could guard this very well. This prevents wind from running through the hive. The next layer is I just have a standard commercially available slatted bottom rack. And that prevents the bees from building comb on the bottom of those frames and filling this up with comb. And then this is just an empty box. And below the empty box is the hive stand. And my hive stand, it's made out of treated lumber because it sits on the ground. Again, I said I got this stuff from the side of the road where somebody was taking down a deck. So this is just old deck wood. And that's a heavy duty slatted rack with 3/8 of an inch. It's narrower than the commercially available one. That way it catches a bunch of junk that falls down. It catches more stuff, and you might end up with this box might end up being filled with some stuff. And then this is the heavy part. Bend with the knees, and then this is the bottom here. This is it's 4x4 corners. It's what holds everything up, and then it's deck boards on the perimeter, and it creates a solid channel or cavity all the way to the ground. And then I've got again 1/2 inch hardware cloth on the bottom here. And I just put that there. To prevent other animals that might crawl up, like dig a hole and crawl up underneath and try to make a home in this box. So there it is. Oh, you got something else written over here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're welcome. Everybody, you're welcome. Glad to be able to do this. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy being able to share it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here doing it, obviously. Because I want everybody to know that I understand what I see doing cutouts and examining hives. It is not really common knowledge. There's people on YouTube that do cutouts and they got a lot of videos and things, but I've never really see the inner workings of the hive, of the natural hive explained. So I'm glad I can do it. Next time we have, let's see if I've got it up here. Someone from Hawaii that will be talking, and we can find it all on cnybeekeeperschool.com or on the group page.
I got a question for you. I just watched, I get notifications when Cayman Reynolds, he's got quite a few videos out on YouTube. He's down in Tennessee. He apparently recently has been at Hawaii, and he put some videos out from there with a beekeeper there. It wouldn't be the same beekeeper by any chance. Do you know, would it?
Is it a girl?
No, this was a guy.
Okay, it's a girl coming next time. which would be on the 22nd.
Okay.
And then in March, we have building a swarm trap, baiting it and placing it and everything else.
Good. That's what I'm interested
and-
in. I was going to say that I wasn't even looking, and I was at Walmart a couple days ago, and I ran into lemongrass oil, so I picked myself a bottle up. I guess that's my swarm commander, right?
There you go. Yeah, the difference between Swarm Commander and lemongrass oil is the metered application. I tried lemongrass oil and I spilled it all over the place, and I think it was just too strong and nobody wanted it. It's a very light scent. Bees can smell much better than we can.
Yeah.
Let's see. Been finding the queen, and I have beeswax. I want to change that though. That should be a fall thing. I might replace that one with something else. And then we have a local beekeeper near Rochester is going to be talking about his year-round action, what he does in his apiary.
Oh, I wanted to ask you guys if anybody's watched any videos on YouTube, and now I got his name, what he goes by, on the tip of my tongue, but he's got all his bees outside on the back of his house, and he's got a room inside the back of his house where he brings some of his hives in, and he's got some in the windows of the house, of that room. And he talks real fast, and he goes, "This is why I'm superior to all other beekeepers." And he's kind of out there a little bit. I was wondering if anybody's ever seen any of those videos.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That guy, you know what? I bet you what he does works fabulous. But it requires day-to-day constant work. And he's not doing much anything else but taking care of his bees. And
Right.
I kind of like winter. I like the break. I don't think I would want to keep bees year round where I'd have to do it all the time. I'd get sick of it pretty quick, I think. That's just my personality style, though. I like the break and then come back into it and learn again and do new stuff again. So, but yeah, that guy, bet you what he does works for him. So more power to him.
Yeah, he's got his tractor and he moves bees around every day and puts them on his deck and takes them in. He's going to clean out his garage and put some of them in there if it gets too cold. And he's got bee poop everywhere in the room inside the back of his house. When you can see that when he pans around, you can see bee poop all over all over the white paint on everything in the room. But
he's
hey,
like the cat lady of beekeepers.
Yep. That's what he does.
There's all sorts out there, and
Yeah, he's got all
be.
his hives are uniform. They're brown colored, and he's got like camel white splatches all over them. And then he's got this divider board between his supers where he drills a hole and he puts those glass fuses in there, and he can pull it out and put his. It always talks about his LED flashlight. I can stick it in there and see what my bees are doing at all times, and just he's kind of out there. He's out there a little bit.
Yeah, there's good entertainment out there.
Yeah, yep.
All right. Well, anyway, this is about it. If anybody's got any last words, speak now or forever hold your peace, or however that goes. All right.
I was going to say I can't wait for the bee season to start.
No, I know it.
All right, I'm gonna shut her down. Well,
all right, have a good night, everybody.
Next time.
Okay, good night.
Thanks for coming.
Yep, bye-bye.